Moscow's most advanced radar installation went dark at 3:47 a.m., not from missile strikes or electronic warfare, but from something far more terrifying. 500 autonomous drones moving like a digital plague across Ukrainian airspace, each one programmed with a single directive: find the frequency, flood the spectrum, and vanish before dawn. What happened next rewrote the rules of modern warfare forever. Picture this. You're the radar operator staring at screens that have protected Russian airspace for decades. Systems worth billions of dollars, designed to track everything from fighter jets to ballistic missiles. Then suddenly, your displays explode with contacts. Not 10, not 50, but hundreds of signatures appearing simultaneously across a 200-kilometer front. Each blip moving in patterns that defy physics, accelerating beyond supersonic speeds, then stopping mid-air like ghosts frozen in digital amber. Your training kicks in. You reach for the threat assessment protocols, but the computer systems lag under the sheer volume of data. Processing power designed for conventional threats buckles under an avalanche of impossible targets. The radar beam sweeps again, and this time there are twice as many contacts, then 4 times, then 8. By 3:52 a.m., Moscow's southern air defense network was drowning in its own data. This isn't science fiction. This happened 6 days ago, and the implications are staggering. Ukraine didn't just launch drones, they unleashed a coordinated swarm intelligence that turned Russia's greatest strength into its most catastrophic weakness. Every radar dish, every processing unit, every human operator became part of Ukraine's trap. But here's what makes this story truly remarkable. The drones themselves cost less than a luxury car. 500 units built for under $2 million total. Compare that to the S-400 missile systems they neutralized, each worth $500 million. It's like watching David defeat Goliath with a calculator instead of a stone. The operation began 3 months earlier in a warehouse outside Kiev. Engineers working 18-hour shifts, not building bigger weapons, but smarter ones. Each drone measured less than 2 feet across, powered by commercial electronics you could order online. No exotic materials, no classified technology, just brilliant programming wrapped in carbon fiber. The genius lay in the software. Traditional military drones operate like individual soldiers, each following specific commands from human controllers. These machines functioned as a collective organism. When one drone detected enemy radar, it instantly shared that information with every other unit in the swarm. When defensive missiles launched, the entire formation adapted in real time, redistributing itself like water flowing around rocks. Moscow never saw it coming because they were looking for the wrong thing. Russian air defense doctrine assumes incoming threats follow predictable patterns. Missiles travel in ballistic arcs. Aircraft maintain steady flight paths. Even stealth fighters must obey the laws of physics. But swarm intelligence operates by different rules entirely. At 2:15 a.m., the first wave launched from positions scattered across eastern Ukraine. 50 drones per site, rising silently into the pre-dawn darkness. No roaring engines, no heat signatures bright enough to trigger satellite detection. Just whispers of motion against the star-filled sky. These weren't suicide attacks. The drones carried no explosives, no kinetic warheads. Their weapon was pure information warfare. Each unit transmitted false radar returns, synthetic signatures designed to mimic everything from cruise missiles to strategic bombers. The electromagnetic spectrum became their battlefield, and they fought with mathematics instead of metal. Russian operators watched their screens transform into digital chaos. Contacts multiplied exponentially, each one demanding immediate threat assessment. Standard protocols called for launching interceptor missiles at the highest priority targets. But which targets were real? The system couldn't tell the difference between genuine threats and computer-generated phantoms. The Panzer batteries fired first, 12 missiles streaking toward what appeared to be incoming cruise missiles. Perfect intercepts, textbook defensive responses. Except they were destroying empty air while the real drones slipped past undetected, hidden in the electronic noise of their own creation. S-400 systems joined the engagement, their sophisticated radars struggling to process the flood of contradictory data. Each launcher held 4 missiles worth $6 million each. Within minutes, they had expended their entire ready magazine, chasing digital ghosts. Reload procedures began, but the window of vulnerability had already opened. Ground controllers radioed frantically between installations, trying to coordinate a response to threats that existed only in computer memory. Communication networks jammed with overlapping reports. Target identification systems crashed under processing loads they were never designed to handle. The entire air defense grid, built to repel NATO bomber formations, paralyzed by an enemy that weighed less than a motorcycle. Meanwhile, the drone swarm executed its primary mission. While defensive systems fired at phantoms, reconnaissance units mapped every radar installation, every missile site, every communication relay across the operational area. High-resolution cameras captured images that would guide future strikes. Electronic warfare pods recorded the exact frequencies and pulse patterns of Russian defensive systems. Most importantly, they proved that swarm technology had crossed a threshold. For the first time in military history, quantity had achieved a qualitative transformation. 500 cheap drones had become something greater than the sum of their parts. A distributed intelligence capable of learning, adapting, and overwhelming even the most sophisticated defenses. The psychological impact struck deeper than the tactical victory. Russian air defense crews, trained to trust their instruments above all else, suddenly faced screens they could no longer believe. Every contact became suspect. Every launch decision carried the risk of wasting irreplaceable missiles on empty sky. But the real masterstroke wasn't the technology, it was the timing. Ukraine waited for the perfect meteorological conditions, launching during atmospheric disturbances that naturally degraded radar performance. They studied Russian shift patterns for weeks, identifying the precise moment when crew fatigue would slow reaction times. Even the moon phase was calculated to minimize visual detection of the swarm. This represents a fundamental shift in the nature of conflict itself. Traditional warfare relied on building bigger, more expensive weapon systems. The side with superior technology usually won. But swarm intelligence inverts that equation. Now coordination matters more than capability. Software trumps hardware. Intelligence defeats firepower. The question isn't whether other nations will adopt similar tactics. The question is how quickly they can adapt their defenses to survive them. Because as Moscow discovered at 3:47 a.m., the age of autonomous warfare isn't coming. It's already here. The aftermath rippled through Moscow's command structure like cracks spreading through ice. By dawn, 3 separate air defense sectors had declared their systems compromised. Not destroyed, not damaged, but fundamentally unreliable. When your instruments lie to you once, how do you trust them ever again? General Mikhail Volkov stood in the underground command center, watching his officers struggle with reports that made no tactical sense. Radar logs showed successful intercepts against targets that never existed. Missile inventories depleted fighting shadows. Electronic warfare specialists detected jamming signatures from equipment that wasn't there. The most unsettling detail wasn't the immediate damage. It was the precision of the deception. Every false signature had been calibrated perfectly, designed to trigger specific defensive responses. The Ukrainian operators didn't just understand Russian air defense systems. They understood Russian thinking, Russian doctrine, Russian psychology. This wasn't random electronic noise. This was surgical manipulation of human decision-making at the speed of light. 300 kilometers south, Ukrainian intelligence analysts reviewed the harvest from their 6-hour operation. Terabytes of intercepted communications, detailed maps of defensive installations, and most valuable of all, comprehensive recordings of how Russian systems responded under stress. Every missile launch, every radar sweep, every radio transmission had been cataloged and analyzed. But the data represented more than tactical intelligence. It revealed something deeper about the nature of modern conflict. Traditional military doctrine assumed that superior technology would always defeat inferior numbers. The Ukrainian swarm had inverted that assumption entirely. Each individual drone cost $4,000 to build. A single S-400 missile cost $1.5 million. The mathematics were brutal. Ukraine could build 375 drones for the price of one interceptor. Even if Russian missiles achieved perfect accuracy, the economic exchange ratio favored the attacker by orders of magnitude. The implications extended far beyond Ukraine's borders. Military planners in Washington, Beijing, and Tel Aviv were already dissecting the operation, recognizing that fundamental assumptions about air defense had become obsolete overnight. If cheap, autonomous swarms could blind the world's most advanced radar systems, what did that mean for aircraft carriers? Strategic bomber bases? Missile defense installations? The technology itself wasn't revolutionary. Commercial drones, off-the-shelf electronics, open-source software algorithms. Any nation with a modest technology sector could replicate the basic capabilities within months. The barrier wasn't technical complexity, it was conceptual innovation, the willingness to abandon traditional thinking about how wars are fought. Ukrainian engineers had spent years studying the problem from first principles. Instead of asking how to build better weapons, they asked how to make existing weapons irrelevant. Instead of matching Russian firepower, they exploited Russian assumptions. Instead of fighting the enemy's strengths, they turned those strengths into vulnerabilities. The swarm operation revealed another crucial insight about autonomous warfare. Human operators, no matter how well trained, became the weakest link in any defensive system. Machines could process thousands of targets simultaneously without confusion or fatigue. Humans could not. When overwhelmed with impossible decisions, people defaulted to familiar patterns that could be predicted and exploited. Russian air defense crews had followed their training perfectly. They identified threats, calculated intercept solutions, and engaged targets according to established protocols. Their failure wasn't incompetence. It was the inevitable result of human cognition confronting problems it wasn't designed to solve. The psychological dimension proved as important as the technical one. After the swarm attack, Russian radar operators second-guessed every contact on their screens. Was that incoming missile real or another phantom? Should they launch interceptors or conserve ammunition? The uncertainty paralyzed decision-making more effectively than any physical damage. Trust, once broken, proved almost impossible to rebuild. Air defense systems depended on absolute confidence in sensor data. When that confidence eroded, the entire defensive network became unreliable regardless of its technical capabilities. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces prepared for the next phase of their campaign. The swarm attack had been a demonstration, proof that autonomous systems could achieve what conventional weapons could not. But the real target wasn't Russian air defenses. It was Russian confidence in their technological superiority. For decades, Moscow had invested heavily in advanced military systems, believing that sophisticated hardware would guarantee victory against less equipped adversaries. The swarm operation shattered that assumption. It proved that intelligence and innovation could triumph over raw firepower. The strategic implications reached beyond the immediate battlefield. If small, autonomous systems could neutralize billion-dollar defense networks, the entire architecture of modern military power needed fundamental recalculation. Aircraft carriers became floating targets. Air bases became stationary victims. Even nuclear deterrence faced questions about the survivability of delivery systems. Other nations watched the Ukrainian demonstration with mixture of admiration and alarm. The technology was accessible, the tactics were replicable, and the strategic advantages were undeniable. Within weeks, defense contractors in dozens of countries began developing their own swarm capabilities. The arms race had entered a new phase, not bigger bombs or faster missiles, but smarter algorithms and more sophisticated coordination protocols. The side that could build the most intelligent swarms would dominate future conflicts, regardless of traditional measures of military strength. But perhaps the most profound lesson wasn't about technology at all. It was about the power of creative thinking in asymmetric warfare. Ukraine had faced an enemy with superior numbers, better equipment, and larger military budgets. Victory seemed impossible using conventional approaches. Instead of accepting those limitations, Ukrainian planners had redefined the entire problem. They transformed weakness into strength, scarcity into advantage, and technological inferiority into strategic superiority. The swarm attack wasn't just a tactical success, it was a masterclass in innovative thinking under existential pressure, Enchel pressure. As Moscow's radar screens finally cleared at dawn, one truth crystallized through the static. The age of expensive, centralized military power had ended in a single night. Ukraine proved that the future belongs not to those who build the biggest weapons, but to those who think beyond the rules everyone else follows. 500 drones worth less than a sports car had just rewritten the fundamentals of warfare forever. The question now isn't whether your military is ready for swarm technology. The question is whether your military is ready to survive it.